I feel that Bergen in a way is my first home, yes. I moved here when I was 16 and have many friends here, and I just know the city very well. And so even if I have an apartment also in Copenhagen, I would say that this is the place where I feel most at home. Horizons. Well, the album is a musical journey in the way that there are many different styles, many different pieces from different countries, different periods. But it's also a musical journey for me, because there are pieces there which I played when I was little, and there are pieces that I recently learned and I've used as encores through the years. Well, these pieces sort of reflect different periods of my life, really, because I've been playing some of the pieces when I was a child, and some of the pieces are through my study years, and then some pieces I've played later on as encore pieces in recitals. Well, I grew up in a home with my parents are music teachers, and there were lots and lots of different music in our household. I mean, I played also in a brass band when I was little. My father conducted the brass band. I was listening to everything from that to pop music to classical to, I mean, a lot of different things. But when I really discovered the music of Chopin, the romantic composers, that's what really I caught on to when I was like 10, 11, and I started playing Chopin nocturnes and so on. The funny thing was that it was immediately a very serious room for me, something which felt that this is me. But I had no idea what a life as a pianist would be, because I was just surrounded by people who worked with music on an amateur basis and no professional musicians. I'm from a small community in Ireland on the west coast, and so I almost found myself being a pianist before I had even considered becoming one. I don't remember my first paid engagement, but I do remember my first recital, my first full recital, which was when I was 14 years old. And I played a huge program. I don't think I've played such a long program since, actually, which was everything from Handel to Norwegian contemporary music with Chopin's Second Sonata and major pieces. And I do remember very, very vividly thinking that it's amazing how the audience actually seems to enjoy me playing for 2 hours. I thought they would be bored, but they seem to enjoy it, and then I thought maybe there's potential for something here. I mean, I think silence is so important in music making. You know, I think often silences between the notes are more important than the notes themselves, depending on the piece, of course. And in a town like Bergen, you can just get up here. It takes 5 minutes by the funicular, and you're completely in the woods, and it's completely silent except the helicopter, which we hear right now. But. I certainly have different memories connected to several of the pieces. There is a piece by Smetana called At the Sea, is a concert study, which is for me very much connected to my main teacher, Jiri Linka, who was Czech and who introduced me to that whole repertoire. And it's a really difficult piece, which I learned when I was 15, and I was really struggling with it it stretched my technique, and it stretched my understanding of piano technique in many ways. And I used it as an encore in my first recital, so that's very much connected to him. My teacher at the time was the Czech professor Jiri Linka, who has lived in Norway since the beginning of the 70s, and he was teaching at the Bergen Conservatory, and I started there when I was 16. His temperament was and is a totally explosive one. It's a very Slavonic temperament, and I was a rather shy boy from the province island of Western Norway. So I think that's almost the most important thing I got from him was, he really kicked me every day and said that this is music, this is life and death, this is blood, this is really, really important. Well, I think Clair de Lune is just one of these incredible early pieces by Debussy where he opens up a completely new world of music, which has to do with stillness and sound rather than development of thematic material. And that is so incredible, also because what he creates are such wonderful harmonies and simple melodies, and everything stands still. And it is like, if you want, when you look at the moon. Well, Norway is a very small country and doesn't have that big of a tradition in classical music, and I feel I've been part of the classical music life really growing and becoming an important part of our culture the last 20 years, and that's been very, very exciting. And the orchestras have done things that they have never been able to do before, and for the big orchestras to do the Mahler's cycle for the first time, and for me as a Norwegian pianist to be one of the first Norwegian soloists really to have a major international career, that is I think there is a freshness in that which is maybe difficult if you're from a country where there's so much tradition, when you have the burden of tradition on your shoulders. I do admire especially many pianists from the past. I feel part of a tradition. I do admire very, very much Dino Lipatti, the pianist, the Romanian pianist who died in his 30s, very tragically, and I think it's so tragic for the music history. He was such a perfect pianist, such a saint musically. It's just the music just speaks by itself, and at the same time very, very passionately. And he was just such a perfect pianist. People don't realize what a virtuoso he was. He would have played just everybody under the table. The Mompu Canzone Danza is made famous by a recording by Michelangeli, Arturo Benedetti Michelangeli, and I think he's playing it in such a special way, there's a sort of mystical quality about it, and it just sings, and the proportions of sound is just so magical, which was always with him, and I really love that recording, and I would often play that for people, coming at my home and saying, play me one piece of piano music, just something very short and very beautiful, and I would put that on. And through that I've got to love Mompu's piano music, which I think is so special. Such beautiful harmonies. And always when the piece is finished, there's something in the air, left something very intriguing, I find. Well, I have two Norwegian composers on this disc. It's two pieces by Grieg and then a piece by Johan Halvorsen, which is a piece mainly known by fiddle players. So I've made a little transcription by it. It's the Song of Veslemøy, from a suite for violin and piano. And I hope the violinists do forgive me for this little transcription that I've taken their big hit, because it's very famous as a violin encore in Norway. It's such a beautiful melody. For me, the wild nature of northern Norway, I think, when you really get up far north with a very dramatic mountains, steep and then straight down in the water, or that's the most dramatic horizons for me, those chains of mountains. The Charltrenne piece is an interesting case because it's a chanson, it's a song which was released by a very famous pianist under the name of Mr. Nobody, and the record was called Mr. Nobody Plays Charltrenne, and since he chose to be Mr. Nobody, I think we cannot tell his name. Grieg is very close to me. I have played quite a lot of his music, and in a strange way I don't feel it's because I'm Norwegian, and of course I grew up with this music, and Grieg's music have become the symbol of Norwegian culture, of Norwegian music. also because he used elements of the Norwegian folk music. But I do feel there's something so simple and so refined which speaks directly to your heart, which very few other composers have this ability to do. Maybe Chopin and Schubert has this also, this very singing quality and the harmonies, and you immediately hear it's a piece by Grieg, and when you start playing in the audience, you hear a sort of sigh in the audience, and they love this music. It really speaks to people, and I love playing. And there's especially a short folk song which he transcribed towards the end of his life, which I just find very, very touching, which I've included. How I prepare for each performance really depends on what I have to play, because sometimes I play something which I've played for a long time, then I obviously need less time than if I play something new. But I always like to prepare so that I really know what I'm doing when I go on stage, because when I have prepared myself meticulously in that way, technically, musically and so on, then at the moment of the concert, it should be like a Zen moment where you just can be completely spontaneous and it can happen just in the moment. But to feel that freedom, you need to be really prepared in every way beforehand. After traveling for 15 years at least, quite extensively, I don't question it so much anymore. I mean, I use quite a bit of time in airplanes and airports, but I always find things to do and work with and read, and so I don't find myself being bored. I can sometimes get very tired of moving around. But that has become a part of life, and I have friends many places, and I find it much easier now to travel than 10 years ago, because I know places and I know people and so on. And I find often that life at home can be then more challenging, because I don't have a schedule, I don't have things I have to do, which I will have when I travel. So, you know, when I'm at home, I have to wash the dishes and pay the bills and plan my day, like everybody else, of course, but I'm not used to it. In something like music, you just see more and more, and you see more and more of the mystery as well, the deeper you go into it. And since I have had this special relation to the piano and to the music since I was 4, I cannot imagine a life without it. It's just like breathing for me.